morning. Good morning. I
I,
hope,
I I didn't mean I didn't mean to interrupt your surfing. I know like the morning for you is surfing. I was shocked to see you say, "Well, I'm surfing," and it's like 6:30 in the morning. So obviously where you are. But, glad
it's
to
called
have you.
surfing in place, not sheltering in place.
Hey, I want to start by talking about you personally, about your own experience. Where you've been mentored. Like, who inspired you? Like when you were younger or in your development, like what are some of the experiences and stories and people that just sort of sparked you and got you where you are today? I know there's a long story there, but can
Yeah.
you give us a short version of that?
Well, there have been not necessarily under the label mentor, but there have been people who definitely changed the arc of my life. One was a sixth grade teacher who convinced my parents to take me out of the public school system in Hawaii and stick me into a college prep school. She thought that I had too much potential to stay in the public school system. So that, if she had not done that, I would not be on this webinar right now. So that was a teacher. Fast forward, when I did my first job, I worked in the jewelry manufacturing company, believe it or not. And the jewelry manufacturing company, I was mentored by the CEO, a guy named Marty Gruber. And I learned to sell. The jewelry business, we sold to retailers who in turn sold to consumers. And it's a very tough business. So I learned how to sell. And that selling skill has stayed with me the rest of my life. I can't tell you that Steve Jobs, quote unquote, mentored me, but he definitely inspired me and scared the shit out of me. So all in all, that was a positive experience. And there was another person at Apple, the Apple General Counsel, a guy named Al Eisenstadt, who also helped me along. So yeah, I've had some people who are definitely formative in my life.
Yeah, so if you look back to when you were creating the garage and some of the work in
Mm-hmm.
investing in companies, what did you like bring forward from those experiences as sort of the inspiration that you got? Like, how are you doing that for other people in your last whatever decades you've been doing
Well,
this?
I have a mantra for my existence, and my existence's mantra is to empower people. And I'd like to empower people with my writing, my speaking, my webinar appearances, my investment, my advising, certainly my employment. And that's what I try to do. So I've started a few companies. I've worked at Apple. I've worked at the Motorola division of Google. Now I'm chief evangelist of a company called Canva out of Sydney, Australia, and a podcaster. So we're talking 40 years here. I'm old. So I've had a lot of experiences like that. And one of the reasons why, maybe the best reason why to write a book, and I have a book called The Art of the Start 2.0, is to pass along knowledge. And I think that's the purest motivation for writing a book.
I've been really intrigued by your podcast, and you've interviewed some really impressive people. So, can you talk to us about, were there any things about mentorship or influence that you learned in meeting with some of those folks?
Well, if you ask people, there's always one or two people who changed the arc of their life. So, for example, with Jane Goodall, it was really her mother. Her mother enabled her to go from the UK to Africa as a teenager. Not clear to me I would have done that for my daughter. So, for Jane Goodall, there was her mother. And Roy Yamaguchi, a very famous chef of Roy's Restaurants, he had a mentor when he was at the Culinary Institute of America. I think as you look back in your life, there's always this one or two people, teacher, coach, mentor, who really changed your life.
Yeah. So what is like when you think about, and I know it's a little bit different than a lot of the mentorship that you had or influence is sort of organic or people you knew,
Yeah.
but when you start a relationship, like so we're doing in Macedonia is we're connecting people for the first time. What do you think is
Mm-hmm.
critical for them to know when the mentor and the mentee meet for the first time and want this to be successful and productive and helpful?
Well, I think it's as a mentor, uh, it's all about wanting to pay back the world, to fulfill what I would say is a moral obligation, that if you've gone through the door of opportunity and been successful, your moral obligation is to leave the door open, or maybe even make the doorway bigger. There are some people who believe that, I've been successful, now I'm going to close that door so no one else can be successful. And that really has to do with your overall mindset. So some people's mindset is that, the rising tide floats all boats, the glass is half full. Other people's mindsets is, your gain is my loss. And a mentor should never have that. I mean, by definition, if a mentor has the attitude of your gain is my loss, that person isn't a mentor. So
How do
that
you
I think
balance?
that's important.
I mean, clearly with your books and the work that you do, it's very inspiring. And then when you're working with someone one-on-one or working with a team, how do you balance this inspiration to like being brutally honest, saying, I don't know, you've got some troubles here. You need to do something different. Like, how do you
Yeah.
balance that two pieces of it?
Uh, well, if you had to pick one, I think it's better to be too tough than too positive. Um, because, telling people that they're doing a great job when they are in fact not, in the long run, is a huge negative. And so, I can't tell you, I'm not claiming that Steve Jobs mentored me, but the fact that I lived in great fear of Steve Jobs enabled me to do better work. And if Steve Jobs had been one of those kind of, touchy-feely, positive psychology, focus always on the good stuff, never have a mean, bad word, well, Apple would not be what it is today. I would not be what it is today. I think when you look back in your life, the toughest bosses and the toughest teachers are the ones that you learn the most from. And it may take you 20 years to figure that out. So I think that, tough love is a much, if you had a choice and say, okay, you can give me insincere positive love, or you can give me tough love, take the tough love.
So that means that the people being mentored need to be, we always talk about this, coachable. Like, how do you not get
But
insulted by that feedback and you become coachable?
well, I mean, first of all, it's okay to be insulted, because life is cruel. So if you think that you can go through life and everything is unicorns and pixie dust, you're in for a rough life.
Mm.
Arguably, the when you look at the great companies and the great entrepreneurs, it's not like they were born with trust funds and then they, went to Stanford. From Stanford, they went to Harvard. From Harvard, they went to Goldman Sachs. From Goldman Sachs, they became Jeff Bezos. It ain't that simple. And I would argue that if you were a trust fund baby and you did go to the right private school and then Stanford and then, Harvard and Goldman Sachs, you might be a great private equity, you might be a great investment banker, but you won't be an entrepreneur. I
Yeah.
mean,
You know, when I met you years ago in Cleveland, and we were sitting at a dinner, and you were going on and on about your hockey life, and
yes.
something that sort of sparked me about that. What's the difference between, like, you think about coaching in the sports world, and what can you extract out of that and drop it into the entrepreneurship world? There seems to be
Well,
coaching's big in sports, so
yeah, I think they're very similar. It is about taking people under your wing. It is about, giving them tough love. I mean, if you look at the great coaches, I well, this is going to date me, but I wouldn't say that Vince Lombardi, who was arguably one of the greatest football coaches ever, was a warm, touchy-feely kind of guy. I mean, uh, and sometimes from the outside looking in, if you look at Bobby Knight, throwing chairs and all that, you think Bobby Knight, what a scary guy. But if you talk to his players, they loved Bobby Knight. And so I think it's very difficult to judge people from the outside looking in. And if you truly want to be a good mentee, you have to sign up for the fact that you're going to get ripped a few times. And you're going to look back 20 years later and say, thank God I was ripped.
yeah. You know, when I work with entrepreneurs, I tell them when they get feedback that they don't like, I said, look at that as a gift and a nugget that's
Yeah.
going to lead you to future. Do you have any examples of times where you've been working with an entrepreneur or a team and you give them this gift that actually turned them around and made them move forward?
Well, I am asked to give thoughts about people's pitches and ideas all the time. And when I do it, well, first of all, I do two things. So one is I've noticed that there's this like endless request of this. So what I did in the past is I said, all right, so, if you make a $500 donation to my son's college hockey team, then I'll review. Because I don't really want your money. I just want to see if you truly are going to value what I'm going to do. And I'll tell you something, it's very interesting. 95% of people go away.
Mm.
They won't donate $500 for 2 or 3 hours of my time, which again, the money's not coming to me. So it doesn't matter to me. It's just, I want to see how much you care. Right.
Yeah.
So there's that. And I also tell them when I'm about to review them or their pitch, I say, listen, we can go one of two ways. I can use all the bullshit venture capital ways of saying, oh, this is promising. We really like you. We think you have potential, blah, blah, blah. Or I can tell you what I really think. And it's going to be tough and it's going to be brutal. Pick one. But I want you to consciously pick one, because after the fact, I don't want you to tell me that it was, too tough, negative experience, whatever. Here's a quarter. Call your mama up and tell her, you need help.
It's amazing to me that people will turn you down for the $500. I find that to be, it's amazing. Hey,
Well,
so
I mean, I think that's a tell, right?
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
it's the money's not coming to me, so it doesn't matter. But if you don't think my time's worth it, what can I say?
So we're talking about an early stage entrepreneurial ecosystem in
3 minutes.
Macedonia. A lot of the entrepreneurs are starting maybe a little bit
Yeah.
further down the road. What do you think makes I mean, we know the drop-off rate for entrepreneurs is pretty high. What do you think it takes to be a very successful entrepreneur in terms of mentoring or not mentoring, whatever it is? Like, what do you think are the characteristics of someone who actually can move things forward?
Well, believe it or not, I think one thing is luck, and nobody likes to mention luck, but I mean, there's a reason why Bill Gates has a foundation and no one knows who Gary Kildall is, of digital research. And arguably digital research could have been MS-DOS, which could have been Microsoft, and he could have been Bill Gates. So a lot of it is, looking back, it's luck and serendipity and, et cetera, et cetera. So, but having said that, get lucky is not a strategy. I mean, you can't, you can't exactly go forward in life saying the way I'm going to succeed is going to get lucky. It just doesn't work like that. Now, I think that probably the richest vein for successful tech startups is that you create a product that you want to use. And then you hope that you're not the only nutcase in the world that wants to use it. So, Woz and Jobs created an Apple I. It's the computer that Woz wanted to use. Lucky for them, they weren't the only two people in the world who wanted to use an Apple I, a personal computer. Now, I'm not saying that, every time you make something that you want to use, you'll be successful. But I think that's a richer vein than making a product that, you've surmised from reading consulting reports that there's a market for this.
Yeah. So what entrepreneur would you love to interview for your podcast that you're hoping to sort of get soon?
I would love to get Richard Branson or Elon Musk or Elon Musk's mother.
Elon Musk's mother.
Yeah.
It's great. What do you think she'll say?
I don't know. That's why I want to interview her. So, who else I would love to interview is Tony Fauci.
Fauci, that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah, it would be.
Actually, I was doing my dissertation. I tried to interview Steve Wozniak, and he said, "I'm busy. Talk to my mother." And that was actually the funniest 3 hours I've ever had. She just went on and on and on. So his mother was brilliant.
Steve Wozniak was on my podcast. So if people want to hear Steve Wozniak unleashed, my podcast is at remarkablepeople.com. Seriously, as an entrepreneur, as a tech entrepreneur, I have episodes that are essential. So one would be Steve Wozniak. Another would be Bob Cialdini. He wrote the book Influence. He's the godfather of influence. Another is David Ocker. He's the godfather of branding. There's Gary Vaynerchuk, not the godfather of anything necessarily, but social media. iJustine, social media. And so there are 5 or 6 episodes of my podcast that if you're a tech entrepreneur, you have got to listen to.
Yeah. So listen to guys' podcasts, read some of the books from the people he just talked about. There's some great things to learn, and don't go it alone, but like open your brain up. And guys' books are terrific. And so take a look at those. Even his older ones are actually still relevant and inspiring. So I urge you to go on. Was it GuyKawasaki.com? Is that what's your website?
GuyKawasaki.com is obviously my website, but really, if you want to see what I'm really doing, it's remarkablepeople.com. And it's LinkedIn where I do most of my posting.
Great. Thank you very, very much, Guy. I know
Thank you for having me. And someday I hope to get to Macedonia. I've never been there.
We'll get you there. I'm sure Igor would love to host you in Macedonia, or actually officially the Republic of North Macedonia. And I'm sure Igor would like welcome you with open arms, maybe 6 feet apart.
All right, and a mask. All right.